Matty Fresh on the track up at State. And I'm bringing to you live my boys Alec and Nate. Tequila Ty, Jay, Nelly, and Zillin in the building. So kick it back, pour the drink. We chillin' because I'm boozing and betting and balling like I'm 2-6. And the blue kicks, watch me move quick. Yeah, this the blueprint. So who's getting involved? Welcome into the show. This is Booze, Bets, and Ball, baby.
All right, welcome back to Booze, Bets, and Ball, a Penn State football podcast brought to you by Big Banter Sports. If you're here, I mean, you know what we're going to talk about. Penn State loses to Ohio State 20-12. Look, we're not going to get into the specifics of this game, really, because I think everyone pretty much knows what went down and how bad it was. But, here we are. It's year 10 under James Franklin, now 1-9 against Ohio State. And the first two losses obviously were when those teams were really bad in 2014 and 2015. And they took Ohio State to overtime, double overtime the first in 2014 anyway, like a competitive game. And then from 16 on, after they won in 16, they found a different way to lose to Ohio State every year. One year you blew two big leads. Then it was you can't put up enough points, and then it became you didn't have enough depth and talent to overcome injuries when your backup right tackle gets destroyed by a 5-star and turns your quarterback into a turnover machine. And now this year it was okay. The offensive line's good. The depth around the team is good. The defense is elite and set up in a position to play with Ohio State. And yes, they were, because this defense pretty much only gave up 13 points to Ohio State. They scored a late touchdown after the offense the game was over. The defense had just been on the field too long. That Marvin Harrison touchdown at the end of the game. But when it was a competitive game, they only gave up 13 points in the horseshoe. Like, that is so impressive, and it didn't matter because Penn State cannot figure out an offense after I was told for 4 years that Sean Clifford was the problem. Sean Clifford's why we can't beat Ohio State. So when we bring in the 5-star, he's going to make plays that Sean Clifford can't. And, that's going to be the difference. And they're going to be able to beat Ohio State and now Michigan, who has lapped them considerably at this point. And the 5-star you brought in goes, 18 for 42 for 191 and a touchdown. But it was probably like 10 out of 36, 34 before Ohio State kind of pulled their starters and Penn State scored at the end there. A lot of that damage was done on the last drive. I don't know what the play calling is because it doesn't make sense. They don't throw down the field. I mean, the receivers aren't really good anyway, I guess. No one gets separation. There's not a lot of talent there. Like, you look at Marvin Harrison Jr. on the other side, and Penn State's defense probably played just as good as Ohio State's defense did. The problem was they had, probably the first non-quarterback to be taken off the board in the draft this upcoming spring, and it made a difference. And Penn State doesn't have that on offense. I don't know what is with Drew Aller. He kind of plays scared at times, in my opinion, and I don't know how much of that is. I don't know if there's a psyche thing here, and I'll have to get your opinion on this one, Nate, but for me, him sitting behind Sean Clifford last year, and every time Sean Clifford sailed the ball or threw an interception or got sacked, and the crowd would start chanting, "We want Drew," or start booing. Like, I think he took that and was like, wow, like, I don't want to make mistakes because this sucks. And I think that's a thing. Like, I think him sitting there and hearing that, like, he's afraid to be in the same spot where Sean Clifford became like the scapegoat for everything. And I think he's trying to avoid that by just playing safe and not doing anything dumb to ruin the game. And it's kind of costing them through they're not winning games, because at this point he has 13 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I'd rather he be at 22, 23 touchdowns with 6 or 7 interceptions. I do. That means you're scoring more. And with that defense, as long as it's not a pick six, chances are the other team isn't scoring off of it anyway. I don't know what Mike Yurcich is. 2021, he couldn't run the ball. Then last year, he looked great outside of the Michigan game. And then this year, the whole Drew Aller is going to do what Sean Clifford couldn't. and we brought in 2 transfer wide receivers who I don't think played a meaningful snap yesterday. And this is going to fix everything. And that did not happen because this offense literally looks like it's taken many steps backwards. And, people on Twitter, like you and I would tweet stuff when they were playing like Illinois and Northwestern. And it's like, wow, they don't look that good. Like they start slow. They miss a lot of throws and people are like, oh, shut up. Like it's a noon game on the road. They're just like sleepy. And it's like, no, they were hiding stuff and it was vanilla. That's wrong too. That wasn't a thing. I don't know. Our concerns were correct. Is the best way to put it. The offense didn't look right, and they just got away with it because they out-talented everyone. The defense was so good, but you played a defense on equal footing to your defense this week, and your offense got exposed.
Yeah. Okay, lot to break through there and unpack. So I think, I think you could see starting with Illinois and we talked about this. I don't know if we made it on the podcast or not last week. I forget, but we talked about Aller's home and away splits going into this game, and whatever he was at home, 70% completions, and most of those 13 touchdowns, and then on the road he was like 50%, and yesterday, he was far, far, far worse than that. To your comment about like, is he running scared to make a mistake to not get the wrath of the team or of the fan base? That's an interesting one. I don't know. I will not try to ascribe a psychological evaluation to the kid, like based on what he saw, but I think, or based on what he might feel. But at the same time, like, from where he was against West Virginia, when he's like stepping up in the pocket and making throws downfield, on the run, very accurate to whatever yesterday was, which is like throwing off his back foot and sailing balls either 10 yards over receivers' heads or hitting the ground 5 yards in front of them, and just really off base and very stuttery feet and stuff. I mean, it was not good at all, and still managed to no interceptions, like you said. But going into the last drive, he was 10 of 30 for 118 yards, which is 3.9 yards per attempt. And they got a lot of 73 yards in the last drive. And like, I kind of wish they didn't score the last drive. I wish that some of those stats didn't accumulate, because it makes it not look as bad as it was. But that offense got absolutely annihilated yesterday. And like we talked about, they seem to have. There was no thoughtful plan, right? It would be, and maybe it was, maybe like we're too stupid, but things that would work, like in the first scoring drive when Singleton had back-to-back runs of 20 and 18 or 20 and 16, whatever it was, and it's like, we won't do that again, right? Very. So he went that drive. Nick Singleton run for 20, run for 16, and they had some tempo going, and then he took a sack, incomplete pass, and then it was 3rd and 13, and Singleton ran for 6. Like, I don't know, man. Like, it just seems very strange that you find something that's kind of working and then you get away from it. Mm-hmm. The next drive, so then it was 3-3. Defense forced a punt, and we cannot lose sight of how good the defense is. So then you had the first down completion to KLS for 12 yards, and then Singleton run for 2. Harrison Wallace caught a ball. Here's another pet peeve of mine, Commissioner. Harrison Wallace, 7 yards to the Penn State 45, and then 3rd and 1 at the 45, incomplete pass. And I don't remember what play that was. Mm-hmm. But God, like the first 6 games, if it was ever a short yardage situation, you get in that T and you either do the quarterback sneak Eagles thing. I won't say. I think the terminology is stupid, and I don't want to say it, but either that or like last year, I was watching some of the highlights from 2022 just to see what this offense was, and you could at least you can run a handoff to either of the backs there where they have 2 lead blockers, and it was almost guaranteed to get the yard nearly every time, except for the one play against Ohio State last year when it was down on like the 25-yard line. They got stuffed on 4th down, I think. And they did that 0 times yesterday, right? There was at least 3 3rd and short situations that against Iowa, I feel like they would have done the sneak or would have done one of these short yardage packages, and it wasn't there yesterday. And why is that? Like, that just seems ridiculous. Like, there was no valuing getting a first down, right? Like 3rd and 1. If you throw an incomplete pass on 3rd and 1, okay, what are you going to go for it? No, because then you punt, and Riley Thompson punted down to the 13-yard line, which is good field position change, but like, you'd rather try to get the first down with something that works, a very high percentage play, right? And they just didn't do that. So that was sucked. The defense did. The defense killed for most of that game, save the first Ohio State drive where they looked like they were going to really kind of start dominating, but then defense helped them do a field goal. The defense had that other late stop at fourth down on the goal line stand there. The first touchdown drive in the first half was aided by several penalties, right? And like, the defense did their job in spades, and they held Ohio State to half of their expected points. I think I said Ohio State would score 17. So we weren't too far off from that, but my God, the offense just was terrible.
Yeah, I think, if they came out and it was like the Michigan game last year where you just got waxed in all 3 facets of the game, you wouldn't even be that mad today. I think you just admit that, you lost to a better team, and Ohio State is a very good team, especially on defense this year. But when the defense plays as good as it does on the road there, it's frustrating because they put you in a position to win. And Riley Thompson honestly had one of his better games punting, I thought, too.
He had one bad punt.
And they made their 2 field goals and stuff. Like, the special teams and the defense showed up and put you in a position to win at Ohio State, and all you really had to do was get to 20 points, and you couldn't even get to 10 without garbage time. And it was just so bad to watch. You brought up the short yardage things. There's the one where Drew Aller missed what I think would have been a walk-in touchdown for Keandre Lambert-Smith on that slant. If that ball's in front of him, I think that's a walk-in touchdown with Smith's speed. And then I thought, okay, you threw on 3rd there. I thought that meant for sure you were going to go to the T on the 4th and 1, because it was on it was on somewhere in the 45 range, right? I think midfield 45. And they didn't. They punted. And I'm like, okay, so why did you throw then on 3rd if you were just going to punt on 4th? I thought that meant for sure you were going for it. So I don't understand.
And that's the one where they took the timeout, right? They wanted to go for it, and then they took the timeout and came back, and
And then there was the one down. This was deep in their own territory, like the 15, 20. There was another third and 2, 3rd and 1 maybe, and they threw like a flat pass to Singleton, and it was behind him too, and he dropped it. Yeah. Like those plays didn't make sense. They don't go down the field enough. They don't hit the middle of the field ever. And I don't know why they don't, because what I knew of Aller from seeing him last year and then some of the film breakdowns from For the Bloggy this year is that he struggles with the stuff out to the numbers where he sails it. And all they do is throw out there, and he sails them. I don't know why they don't throw down the seam, where Sean Clifford had a ton of success doing that with Yurcich and these tight ends over the 2 years before this. And they don't do it anymore. I don't know what their identity is. They gave up on running the ball very early in this game for no reason, because Singleton actually looked the best he looked all year.
He did. Yeah, he was fast and broke some tackles, and there were holes for him.
Yeah.
Then, he got how many carries did he have total?
9, I think.
Okay, let's see. 9, and 3 of them were within 2 drives of each other, right? And then So he had 9. Allen had 9. Aller is credited with 7, which meant most of them are sacks, right? Or
I think 2 or 3 of them.
God, it was terrible.
Yeah,
we talked last year, I think, a lot about identity and what is the identity of the offense. And in hindsight, I can't remember the exact context of that, but my God, what I wouldn't give to have that offense versus this one, right?
Last year's offense wins this game. Yes, the way the defense played. I agree. Is Aller and his skill set a problem for this offense? Because James Franklin runs an RPO offense, no matter who his offensive coordinator is. It's always been RPO. It didn't work with Hackenberg. It worked very well with Trace McSorley. It worked at times with the very mobile Sean Clifford. And now you pretty much have a kid who's more or less a statue back there. I know people hate that term and say he's not, but he is not Trace McSorley or Sean Clifford when it comes to running the ball and being a threat. And I think that's been honestly a problem why Penn State is having problems running the ball, because teams are not respecting the fact that the quarterback could keep it and run. They're just honing in on the running back. It's a lot easier to defend against when you don't feel threatened by the quarterback's legs. And I really think that for the first time since Hackenberg in 15, we're kind of seeing that be a problem with this team.
Yeah, it's turning out to be a major problem. You kind of like, I guess, take it for granted when you have McSorley and Clifford that, they're going to make things happen. And you go back to McSorley, even in like the Minnesota game in 2016, where, he breaks like a 60-yard run or whatever to put them in field goal position to tie that game at the end. Drew Allen's not doing that, right? And no. How many runs has Clifford had for first downs and stuff? And it's just, it is a totally different ball game.
Clifford was the entire run game in 21.
Yeah.
He was the running back and the quarterback.
So yeah, you take a big dimension of that out. And Caleb Williams, he's had his struggles lately, but if he was our quarterback that game, they win that game, right? I think there's even any semi-decent running quarterback, I think, like you're saying, it's just a different dynamic that we don't have right now. So you don't have to guard against it, but then they also don't really have to guard against much in the middle of the field passing too right now. And I think it was pretty clear that Ohio State left a lot of vacancies, right? There was a lot of zero coverage type blitzes that the Penn State offense could not take advantage of. And
there were a lot of
hot read or something, right? And get a slant or whatever.
There were a lot of open receivers that were just thrown right over their heads where they didn't have a prayer on it. And, also the receivers dropped a lot of passes in this game too. It wasn't all on Aller, and
that's true. Yeah.
They're not the type of group that we've had at Penn State. Penn State is obviously not when Alabama or Ohio State when it comes to wide receivers, but they still recently have put, Chris Godwin, Jahan Dotson, KJ Hamler before
6 draft picks in 7 years, right? Like from 2016 or 2017 till now.
The number one receiver always got drafed high.
Yeah. Godwin,
like a day one
Hamilton,
or day two pick.
Hamler, Dotson, Parker Washington, and I'm missing somebody else who got drafted, but maybe it was 5 out of 7.
Yeah. Well, Deshaun Hamilton.
Yeah. Are any of these guys going to get drafted? And I really like Keandre Lambert-Smith. And I think last year after Utah, it was like that was going to be his breakout. And he did some things early this year too. But I don't know how many targets he got yesterday, but I don't know. It was just it just seemed to be no consistency. He had 6 catches for 52 yards, which isn't terrible, but just no game breakers.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing we talked about. They don't hit big plays. And everyone's like, oh, the long drives are fine, because it chews up clock, time of possession, let your defense take care of the game, shortens the game. When you play an equally talented team, you don't get to prolong these drives because eventually they'll stop you. You need a big play, and they still didn't get any, and it cost them.
Yeah. So if you are a boomer bust kind of high explosive play team where that's all you rely on, that is, that's unreliable because the risk is so high or whatever, the probability of success is so low on those. But then when you're like this team, like when you're like we're trying to play now, or Wisconsin or whatever, you're pretty one dimensional. And if the opposing defense can stop you in the thing you do good, then you're kind of screwed too, right? And if you don't have the other side of it to at least try to find some explosion or something, then you're really screwed. And that's where they find themselves right now. There's like no in between. It's either a few yards and, grind it out or nothing really, So, but still, like, again, though, the other part of this though, is that they have things that they've been doing consistently well all year, finding the tight ends in certain spots, the frickin' T. And they even threw out of the T last year. Like, you had some Tyler Warren stuff last year. And I don't know that there was a position for that going into yesterday's game because they didn't run much in the red zone or whatever. But like, there was just seemingly a lot more dynamicism in terms of the game plan and the strategies against an opposing defense than there was yesterday. I think whether, some people are saying like Dan Orlovsky or whatever, talking about how they don't trust Aller. And then T. Frank is just like looking at the right game plan, but him not being able to make the reads. It's got to be some combination of both things. Right?
I think it's a combination.
You can never say that like the 19-year-old kid should bear the whole brunt of a team's win or loss. Like when you have coaches paid millions and millions of dollars to do this for 80 or 90 hours a week and get it right. And they just can't get it right against Ohio State and very infrequently against Michigan.
Yeah. I think maybe we'll wait if they lose to Michigan, which I think as of today, that is a very likely outcome. But I think it's fair to start having the Mark Richt comparison with Franklin, that talk at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we're kind of headed that way. Now, I don't want to get too far into this because I think this is a talk if they do go 10-2 or 9-3 again. But because, they very well could somehow beat Michigan and somehow win the tiebreaker and end up in the Big Ten championship game, although I find that unlikely. But,
with Iowa losing it, I don't know the stats right now, but Iowa's not that good, right? So, we are Iowa, right? Iowa has no offense. They couldn't beat Minnesota. We're Iowa just like another level or two just above.
Shinier toys. Yeah. But yeah, that's talk that I think needs to happen. Are you going to be happy with these 10-2, 9-3 seasons? Now the playoff goes to 12 next year, which obviously changes things. But are you going to be happy with those, or are you going to take the chance and find the guy that gets you to 11-1, 12-0 national championships, but you risk becoming a Texas A&M, a Miami, where it backfires, and then you all of a sudden you're 6-6, 7-5 every year, and everyone makes fun of you. So you have to, they have to figure this out. Pat Kraft, the AD does, and everyone in that department about, if this doesn't get better this year. And I said I'd probably give Franklin the benefit of the doubt until Aller left, which is after next year most likely, because if I was told we needed the 5-star quarterback to get to the next level, well, he's here. So if this kid leaves, and I know the 12-team playoff makes things, more complicated in terms of what's successful, but if he leaves and the program doesn't look any better, I think it's time to start kind of having the Mark Richt Georgia conversation.
So, it took a while for Dabo to break through at Clemson, right? Now it seems like they've peaked and now are on the way down. Richt, like you're saying, I think that's a good comparison of somebody who never is able to break through. And I kind of thought that this was going to be the year that Penn State did break through and they kind of overcame the, maybe you're catching Ohio State on the way down a little bit, like Florida State was when Clemson broke out. But it does not look like that's the case, right? Ohio State's really good. Kyle McCord is very similar to Drew Aller, but when you have Marvin Harrison Jr. and like weapons that we just don't have, that's a generational talent at wide receiver. It makes up for some of your flaws that the quarterback has. So here's I put this in the group chat. I put this on Twitter yesterday. I think this is an interesting question to think about. So as fans want the football team to win the national championship, win the Big Ten championship, go to the playoffs, whatever. As an AD, what is your goal as an AD? Is your goal to have the football team win a national championship? Is your goal to maximize the amount of revenue that the football team brings in without like putting too much risk? So like if the football team is selling out most weekends and they close to they're going to win 10 games a year. They're going to go to a New Year's Six bowl. They're going to get the revenue from one of those bowls. And then like, is that acceptable? Is that a good enough ceiling for you? If like it's between, I don't know, the Citrus Bowl and the Rose Bowl or whatever every year, but you're not going to like tank. And Franklin's probably not going to tank, but he also might not break through all the way. So like, if you're Pat Kraft, you take the risk of tanking and losing a lot of revenue, losing a lot of fan support if you end up being 5-7 or 4-8 or whatever, and you go down the road of Texas A&M or Miami. Is that risk worth the potential reward of going 11-1 or 12-0 and making top 4? I don't know that it is, and I think the calculus for him in his job is different than it is for the fans.
Yeah, definitely, and that question is tough. I mean, if you're the AD at say Rutgers, it's just get us to a bowl game every year. Like exactly. Find a way. At Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, it's make the playoff, and 1 out of every 4 years we should at least win it. I think what is it here? Is it New Year's Six every year, and 1 out of every 4 we expect to be in the Big Ten title game. Because, I mean, they're not even doing that. So.
No, they're not. And that's the thing. Like, they're not doing that. But should that be the expectation? Or is like New Year's 6 and being close to Ohio, to beating one of Ohio State or Michigan good enough, but you're still representing well? You're not causing a lot of there's not a lot of trouble on the team. The culture seems okay. Like, is that good enough? Right. Yeah. And I know for fans it's not. And you like halfway through the game, it's like leave your such in Columbus and Fire Franklin and all this stuff. And I get it, but I don't think that is per se the right thing either, because you can end up being like Nebraska and Jimbo or Michigan State or A&M or all these schools that go out and try to hire somebody with a big splash and it just fails. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, look,
but then you get Mike Norvell ones too. And
I know. You get
like friggin'
you get Kirby Smart, you get Mike Norvell, you get
Brent Venables, who I thought I didn't like. He's got, I think, no offensive mind really, right? Himself, he's a defensive coordinator. He came in as a head coach. They rightly sucked last year, and now they're 7-0. And most of those players left to go to USC, and they are doing worse off there than the people he brought into Oklahoma. So it can happen, but it's hard to guess which guys are going to be successful and which ones are not.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years in, I think we're out of excuses and we're out of saying, this is a learning experience. We gave them the benefit of that first 2 years because those rosters were so bad. Then won the Big Ten, but then it was, okay, we still don't have enough depth that we need to compete. Well, then they got that. And then it was, I need the 5-star quarterback. Well, now we got that. And then it was, the transfer portal. Okay, well, I learned how to use the transfer portal. I started bringing guys in. Oh, NIL. Well, we set up an NIL thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you figured out the problem. Iowa 2021, we didn't properly prepare the backup quarterback. So now what does he do? The backup quarterback plays the majority of the second half of blowouts now, when that wasn't the case before. Like, okay, we've learned all these things over the years, but it's now year 10. So how much more are you going to learn between now and the next 10 years that's going to make a significant difference in how you coach or how you can beat Michigan, Ohio State? Because it's just not going to happen.
Oh, it is not. And you need Harbaugh to retire or leave Michigan, and then hopefully that
they go to the NFL or something. Yeah.
And that's how you get ahead. But like, that's the cheapest way to get ahead possible, right? Like but I think I don't know. Excuses, I guess, is the right term, right? Because there was always something. It was in 2018, we're gonna, we're really good. We're gonna go to elite, and that was like that was like Brian Bressie was in that room at the time, right, and stuff, because that was the year before he committed, I think. Yeah. And you're gonna get all these guys, and you got none of them. You got like that next tier. You had a really terrible year in 2020, or 2019 was good. You had a really terrible year in 2020 because of COVID. And then you try to bring in a new coordinator because Ronnie left to ODU. I still think Kirk Chiraka got screwed royally, and everybody thinks that he sucked, but he is better than Mike Yurcich. And I for this team, for this quarterback, I think too, he probably, because he runs the ball very well and seems a little more creative on that side of it. Now, and then 2021, not so good. Last year, it's like, all right, now here it is, right? And you get Olu Fashanu, and you finally have a good offensive line that's got some stars, and you got 2 awesome running backs. You got some decent wide receivers and tight ends. And like I said, you get the 5-star quarterback, and it's all the same. So
I'm gonna end this on this note. Joe Moorhead's 1-7 at Akron, so that might be coming to a close very soon. So I'd be interested to see what would happen if he was back on the market.
God,
I'm just.
Where did he go right after he left?
So he went to Mississippi State, became the head coach, got canned there, went to Oregon, became the offensive coordinator, took the Akron head coach job.
Thank you. I forgot Mississippi State there. Jesus, I don't know that.
I think he's a Manny Diaz, though. I think he's a guy who thrives better as a coordinator than a coach.
That could be, but Manny Diaz is not going to be here next year, right?
Oh, and that's the other thing that pisses me off, because he's gone, and you wasted he gave you an incredible defense and he had an incredible game plan. Sans Marvin Harrison, but he's pretty much impossible game plan for. But they did enough that Marvin Harrison got his, and they still put the offense in a position to win. And that's stuff that pisses me off about it.
Yeah. The one play where like the replay was head on of Marvin Harrison running at you. I was watching Dom DeLuca 25 yards behind him trying to catch up, but then Abdul Carter had to pick him up and won. Like there was some I don't know, a couple of hiccups there, but like I agree overall.